Data has become one of the most valuable strategic assets of modern organizations, supporting operational processes, business intelligence, regulatory compliance, digital transformation, and competitive advantage. Consequently, organizations must establish effective data governance programs that ensure information remains accurate, secure, accessible, and compliant throughout its lifecycle. Within the CISA framework, data governance encompasses the policies, organizational structures, processes, and controls that direct how enterprise data is created, classified, stored, shared, protected, retained, and ultimately destroyed. Data governance extends beyond technical data management by assigning accountability for information assets and ensuring that business objectives, legal requirements, and security controls remain aligned. Effective governance establishes ownership, stewardship, quality management, metadata management, lifecycle management, and accountability for enterprise information while enabling reliable decision-making and regulatory compliance. A fundamental principle of data governance is that information itself is an organizational asset that requires management comparable to financial or physical assets. Information assets include databases, software, documents, reports, records, intellectual property, and operational data repositories. Organizations should maintain comprehensive inventories of both information assets and information systems to ensure that they can be properly managed and protected throughout their lifecycle. The inventory of sensitive information also provides an essential foundation for organizational privacy programs and regulatory compliance initiatives. Governance responsibilities typically include data ownership and accountability, data quality management, metadata management, data lifecycle management, information security and privacy protection, regulatory compliance, data retention and disposal, access management and monitoring. These governance activities ensure that enterprise information remains accurate, complete, available, confidential, and consistent with business objectives. One of the most important components of data governance is data classification, which is the process of assigning sensitivity levels to information assets based upon business value, confidentiality requirements, regulatory obligations, and potential organizational impact if compromised. Classification enables organizations to allocate security resources appropriately instead of applying identical controls to all information regardless of sensitivity. Data classification is formally defined as the assignment of a sensitivity classification to a dataset or information asset, allowing organizations to implement proportional protection mechanisms. A data classification policy defines organizational classification levels and corresponding handling requirements for each category of information. Typical classification schemes include top secret, secret sensitive, or confidential public. The policy specifies how information at each classification level may be stored, transmitted, copied, printed, destroyed, archived, or shared with third parties. For example, highly classified information may be prohibited from transmission across public networks or storage within cloud environments unless additional encryption and security controls are implemented. An important governance principle is that classification responsibility is shared. The Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, typically establishes the enterprise classification policy, while data owners are responsible for correctly classifying and labeling information assets. Users, custodians, and administrators are subsequently responsible for handling information according to its assigned classification throughout its lifecycle. Classification directly influences numerous operational controls, including access control requirements, encryption standards, backup procedures, retention schedules, data sharing restrictions, media handling requirements, disposal methods, incident response priorities. Organizations frequently link access control policies with classification policies so that increasingly sensitive information receives increasingly restrictive authorization requirements. Highly classified information typically requires stronger authentication mechanisms, stricter approval processes, and more comprehensive monitoring than public information. A practical classification program should remain simple, understandable, and enforceable. Excessive numbers of classification levels create unnecessary complexity, increasing the likelihood of user error and inconsistent implementation. Many organizations successfully implement four-level classification models: secret, restricted, confidential, public, with clearly documented handling procedures for storage, transmission, destruction, encryption, and physical protection corresponding to each level. Sensitive information such as passwords, financial records, customer data, merger plans, or personally identifiable information, PII, typically require stronger protections than publicly available marketing materials or press releases. Data governance also supports regulatory compliance with frameworks such as GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS, and other privacy regulations by ensuring that personal and sensitive information receives appropriate protection based on legal obligations and business risk. Information classification facilitates data minimization, retention management, privacy controls, and security monitoring while reducing the likelihood of unauthorized disclosure or regulatory violations. From a CISA audit perspective, auditors evaluate whether organizations maintain formal governance structures, clearly defined ownership, documented classification policies, consistent labeling practices, appropriate access controls, and effective lifecycle management procedures. Strong data governance and classification programs enable organizations to improve information quality, strengthen cybersecurity, optimize resource allocation, ensure regulatory compliance, and support sound governance over one of the enterprise's most valuable strategic assets.